So today I'm trying to explain you what I understood and when to use abstract class. Many times I tried to learn abstract class but I was not satisfied. So I learned more and now I'm trying to share my knowledge on the abstract class and when to use them. Actually abstract class is related to solid principles also. How it is related we'll see. So mainly what solid principles tells is we should minimize code changes. Our code should be written such that the changes are minimal and it should not break existing things. Design patterns tell that design patterns are solutions to common problems, right? So it is all based on solid principles also. So that is what we are learning. So now I am trying to tell something about the abstract class and when to use an abstract class. So here is my project where I have some 3 projects where I have one employee object with some common properties like name, age, basic pay, city, state and zip. And we know that employee will have a salary and here is a calculation of the salary of the employee which tells it is basic pay into 10. And then it has a function called print address which returns the address of the employee using the properties city, state and zip. I hope that is pretty straightforward. And then suppose I have a test project here. I haven't written anything but it is for testing the methods in the employee class. Some unit test which I'll be writing. I am not writing here, I am just showing that. So I am coming back and then I have a client console application. This is a client which consumes my common DLL here. This DLL which uses the class which is present in the DLL and the functionalities which is present in that class. So I have a program which I am setting an employee and the client is calculating the employee of the salary of that employee. Salary and address and I am displaying it. So it seems pretty straightforward. It is displaying a salary which is telling it is basic pay into 10. Some calculation based on the basic pay. Here I am showing only small calculations, so because just to explain the purpose of using. Here a print address is another common functionality which is fine, which is telling the address details of the employee. So fine, I will just try to execute. See, I am getting a salary of 2000. 2000 means when the basic pay is 200, the salary becomes 200 into 10 which accounts to 2000 and that is correct and it is displaying the address from Bangalore, Karnataka and the zip code is 560068. So that is fine. For now that is fine because I have only some employees in my organization. Suppose my organization grew and now I have different types of employees. By telling different types of employees, I tell that now I have a permanent employee as well as contract employee. So usually how you do such a change in your application. The beginners or the developers in the beginning, they do something like I modify this employee class and I make an employee type property. Okay, I make an employee type property and then in my calculation now based on the employee type I'll have slightly different salaries for contract and permanent employee. Suppose if employee type equals permanent, I return basic pay into 10. Otherwise equals contract, I return something like fine, some different salary for contract employee like that. So this is what I do now. So this seems fine. So I do like this. My second, so now I should have an employee type for an employee. So I modify the client. I'll copy paste from here. I just do a calculation for permanent employee. I'll create the second employee, which is a contract employee. And employee type I'll give contract here. So even though the basic is the same, contract employee will have a slightly less because his calculation is basic pay into 5 and the permanent employee gets basic pay into 10. Let us see whether our code works. I'll just write a console.write line. Employee contract. And my address is printed for the contract employee. This I'm trying. So see, I'm seeing the salary 2000 for permanent employee, and I'll just modify some values for contract employee just to see. Let this be. He is from some other district. Let it be. So now I'll run it just to see whether code is working. So yes, I have different zip code for the second employee, and his salary is lesser than the permanent employee. So this is how we work. Now I'll tell you what is the drawback of the code like this. So where all we change the code? Initially I modified an existing class, right? I added a property in a class. I modified the methods in an existing class. This is what I did now. Then what I did, of course the client changed. That is quite obvious a change because client changed. That was the reason for the change. So that is fine. And then since we modified the existing class, imagine that the unit test fails since we modified the class. I'm not showing here anything, but you can see because now I explained with some small methods. Imagine this is a very big method and it is affecting the existing functionality. So this test case will be affected and it has to be corrected or modified accordingly. Suppose it may fail because of the functionality which needs to be corrected in our new function, modified function, or suppose the test case has to be modified. So that means to tell, by modifying an existing class, we are modifying everywhere and we want to test the entire class, entire places where the class is used. That is one drawback of this. So now we are going to tell how we should have written it using an abstract class. I'll just go here to my employee class. So this thing I should have foreseen this issue because I know this is fine, print address, because whoever has a city, state and zip will have an address, and that is fine, and there is very less chance of this method getting modified. But salary, it will get modified based on new employee types getting added to. Tomorrow if a third employee type like some other employee type like apprentice came, so he will have another salary calculation. So this will go on changing if we code like this. So this is a bad coding practice to be used since we are violating the solid principles. What does solid principles tell us? Solid principles tell us that tells open for modification, open for extension and close for modification, right? Close for modification, that means the existing classes should not be modified much. So how we should have written this? That is where we will get the help of an abstract class. So how I should have written this is like this. I'll make this class abstract and I'll make this method as abstract. Okay, so that there is no definition for this method, definition inside this abstract class, but and I will give int seems fine, but the address I am not going to take it away from here because address is same for any employee. Address calculation doesn't vary for any employee. So now so I am going to extend this class. That means I am going to create another class called permanent employee, which inherits the abstract class. So permanent employee created. Just copy this. So this has a calculation as we had before initially, and that is fine, which inherits the abstract employee class. And also I'll have a contract employee class which has a different salary calculation. So this has a salary calculation which is return basic pay into 5, which is lesser than the permanent employee. So this is how we write, and calling place. So this makes sure that the employee test should not be modified. I mean need not be modified, so that since employee test is testing only the employee class, we are not going to change the employee class. This is how I should have written this. I'm changing it now, but initially I should have written my class with a permanent employee like this, and the salary calculation moved out of it. So next time an employee comes, I add something like a contract employee and my salary calculation is in this. So I don't want to modify these existing test cases, and I am pretty sure that I am not touching the employee class, abstract employee class. So that is how we are extending the class. That is what the solid principles tell. We are not touching the existing class, but we are extending the class, and my client code will become something like, see, now it is since we made the employee abstract, it cannot be instantiated like this. So instead I should specify whether it is a permanent employee or a contract employee like this, and here also I should specify contract employee like this. So this is how I should have written. So now I'll run to make sure it works fine. Yeah, it works fine because see, I'm seeing a salary of 1000. Even one more thing I want to tell, my contract employee can have some extra properties which are not there for the abstract employee, like he will have a contract period, while the permanent employee will not have such properties. He will have some bonus or something like that. Which the contract employee will not have. So like that, we are moving the common things to the abstract employee class, but we are making sure there is nothing like an employee which can be created. An employee should be either permanent employee or an employee should be contract employee. Fine. Okay. So I am going to so this is where we actually use an abstract class. So if we have some common functionalities which won't change, we put it in the abstract class, because I know that the address is never going to change even if it is different employee type, because address is based on city, state and zip, which is never going to change. So the common functionality which doesn't change, I put in the abstract base class, which is not an abstract method, and the abstract methods are those methods which change depending upon my class type, whether it is permanent or contract. I'll tell you another example. Here I told with small classes, but it won't be the case in real life. It may be huge classes, and our change, if I change, imagine an employee class with too many methods in it and we are changing the existing methods. It may break the existing test cases, which is not a good thing, and it violates the solid principles. So that is why we made the abstract. If a new type comes here as what apprentice, I'll add trainee employee, which will again inherit from our employee class, and he will have some new properties like probation and whatever it is. So I am not going to write it, but I am just telling. So here also, when a new employee comes, I am not changing the existing thing. I am just explaining it. I am just deleting this off as well. So that is how we should, so that our employee class is safe from modification. That is what the solid principles tell. One another example, when we made employee abstract and because we are making sure that employee doesn't have an existence of its own. So what happens now? See, it is throwing error. It should be either permanent employee or it should be either contract employee. Tomorrow if a new employee comes, it can be a trainee employee, something like that. So we are making sure employee cannot exist as such. I'll explain with another example of a similar thing by using sales order and purchase order. So I'll make an order abstract class with the common properties, and then I'll have a sales order concrete class and a purchase order class. Class which inherits order class. So sales order and purchase order will have many new properties which the order class doesn't have, and it will have some implementations of its own as well as some common implementation. Common implementation for order class can be like order will have some distance to be covered, like parcel should be transported from one location to another. So it should have a distance method which calculates the distance from origin to destination. But there is nothing like an order. It should either be a sales order or it should be a purchase order. It cannot be a simple order. That is where we are using the abstract class, thereby restricting the creation of the simple order. Sales order and purchase order. Here it will have some additional methods like cost and all which will vary, and that is fine. So here I think I was able to explain when I use an abstract class. Thank you.